Want to know more about Scottish professional wrestling? The SWN podcast interviews the veterans and new faces of the Scottish wrestling scene. My name is Billy Strachan, and I've spent the last 8 years immersed in the world of Scottish professional wrestling, bringing enthusiasm, passion, and now I'm diving into the stories of those behind the characters around the country. Search for SWN podcast on your favourite podcast platforms, YouTube and Facebook for audio and video interviews, along with bonus podcasts like Sharp Dojo Series, SWN Live, and Entitled Wrestling Podcast by SWN. Visit swnscotland.com to find out more or search Scottish Wrestling Network on social media.
As part of the Scottish collaboration, Scottish Mergers is proud to present CrimeDivers with their episode, The Black Widow. I hope you enjoy.
Hi, I'm Laura.
And I'm Joe.
And this is CrimeDivers.
Welcome to today's episode.
Hello everyone. So Jill, where in the world are we today?
We're in the UK.
Cool. And what's the episode called?
It's not very original, I know. It's called The Black Widow. I know there's a lot of Black Widows.
I was just going to say there's quite a lot of Black Widow stories
So
around.
this is just one of them.
Just an appropriate title for the case, I guess.
Well, yeah. So, do you want to dive in?
Let's dive in.
So Dina Holmes was born in 1960 in Hendon, North London, UK, to Michael, a prison officer, and his wife Margaret. Dina had a pretty uneventful childhood. She left school with 10 O-levels, and her career started with a job as a teller at the local branch of the Halifax Building Society. In 1982, when she was 22, she met a guy called Lee Wyatt. The following year, they moved to a place called Green Oaks in Lancing, West Sussex, and they got married in 1984. And in 1987, they had a son called Darren. So the village they lived in, it was just it was small. It was one of these places where nearly everybody knows everybody else. You know, they said hello to each other and passing on the street.
Yeah.
It was described as a very friendly, happy place to live. So Dina got a job in the Woolwich Building Society in nearby Arundel, sorry.
Just thinking about Frozen there.
That's exactly, is that called that?
Arundel.
See, when I was writing that, I thought, I'm sure that's the name of the place in Frozen. Yeah. Not that I've seen Frozen very much. I think I've seen it once.
Yeah, Arundel, yeah.
Well, it's Arundel, I think it is.
Arundel.
So Dina got a job in the Woolwich Building Society, and the couple also set up their own company called Dina Lee Crafts. So Dina would make cuddly toys, and Lee would sell them to local toy shops and gift shops and things.
Right.
And they had this one toy that they really wanted to be used. That their goal was to get this toy to be used in cartoons and films, TV.
Right.
And it was called Sean the Leprechaun.
Right. Okay.
No,
never heard of it, never seen it.
Well, I looked it up and it's not a very pretty leprechaun.
Oh, okay.
So, as I said, they had big dreams of making loads of money with this toy. Mm-hmm. So Lee was away a lot. I think he was traveling, as I say, because he was the one who was selling the toys to gift shops and stuff. So he was obviously doing a bit of travel. So he was away a lot. And when he was home, he would say hello to the neighbours when he saw them, and he was friendly. But he was but the neighbours said he was never around long enough for them to really know anything much about him. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, the Dina Lee company failed, and Lee's dad helped him get a job in the Bedford Hotel in Brighton. Dina, realising that her dreams of being a millionaire were not going to happen, she started stealing money from the building society where she worked.
Oh dear.
But we'll sort of get back to that. Mm-hmm. So, stick a pin in it.
Stick a pin in it.
So, one day Dina met this man called Julian Webb. He was an advertising rep for the West Sussex Gazette. And he wanted to do a makeover with someone using products and clothes from local shops, just a way to advertise local businesses. Mm-hmm. So he thought that Dina would be a perfect model for this, and she was more than happy to do it. So she was in the local newspaper, modelling clothes, advertising products, and they actually started having an affair.
Oh dear. Mm-hmm.
So her husband Lee obviously had no idea what was going on, mm-hmm. and he and Dina got a mortgage and moved into a new house together in a place called Yapton. So Julian and Dina had started their affair in May 1991, and by August, May, June, July, August, that's 3 months.
Yeah.
I had to count on my fingers there. They went round to Julian's mum's house to tell her that they were getting married.
Okay.
So this is the first time that Julian's mum had even met Dina. So obviously she was thinking, what the fuck? Like, who is this woman? Like,
Yeah.
you know, you've only known her for like 3 months. What's going on?
Yeah, like, it's a bit soon to be getting married, maybe.
And then a couple of weeks later, Dina's neighbours noticed wedding cards on the windowsill of her house. They must be nosy neighbours to be looking right in and
Must be.
be able to see what the cards were. But anyway, so obviously her neighbours were confused as to why there were wedding cards in Dina's window when she was already married. They hadn't seen her husband for a while, but they just assumed he was away for work because, you know, as I said, he was away a lot. But while he was away, she got married.
So she's
Anyway,
committed
bigamy. Anyway, meanwhile, 300 miles away in the Cornish seaside resort of Newquay, a man called Colin Mitchell was looking for a job. He was just walking along the street one day. He was just like popping into all the businesses, you know, just to see if anyone was looking for staff. So one of the amusement arcades took him on. And the manager said that Colin was easygoing, he got along with everyone, he would go out for drinks with other staff members, and he fitted in really well. And there was a flat above the arcade that was empty, so he moved in there and rented, while he was working at the arcade, he rented the flat above.
Yeah.
But Colin had a secret. His name was actually Lee Wyatt, Dina's husband.
Oh, okay.
And he was on the run and in fear for his life.
Okay. I wasn't expecting that.
And why was that, may you ask?
Yes, why was that?
Because Dina lied to him because she wanted him out of the way. Because obviously she'd met the new guy, she wanted to get married.
Oh, so she's told him that... What? Whoa, I'm going to explain this one, aren't you?
Right, remember Sean the Leprechaun?
Yes.
Right? One day, Lee had came home from work. And obviously this is when they were still together. And she told him that she had been approached by the Irish airline Aer Lingus, and they wanted to give Sean the Leprechaun to their first class passengers. You know, just a wee free gift.
Right.
But that wasn't it. That's nothing.
Oh, okay.
Right? Disney. You know, that tiny little company called Disney. Wanted to license Sean so they could make a movie about him.
Oh, fuck off.
So they were talking about like millions of pounds. They were going to be millionaires,
Right,
right?
okay,
This is their dreams.
Yeah.
Even though, if you remember, I just told you that the Dina Lee Craft had actually failed.
Yeah.
But anyway,
Well, Sean the Leprechaun was going to save
yeah,
the day.
obviously Sean the Leprechaun, he was going to save the day. So, of course, it took more than that to convince Lee. You know, he wanted proof. You know, because would you really?
Well,
you
I'd
know,
want proof.
Exactly. But she was smart. She had letters from Disney and Aer Lingus on fancy letterhead paper
Bloody hell, she obviously went...
with the offers. So they must have looked legit
Yeah.
to Lee, you know. She showed him, they're on letterhead paper. She showed him it.
Yeah, well, I mean,
And-
if he's asked for proof and she's given
And she's
it, then...
given him it, yeah.
fair
So
dues,
it
you know.
was like, okay, like, this is it. We're making it big. But unfortunately, the excitement didn't last for long. A few days later, Dina told Lee that the mafia knew about the Disney deal and they wanted a share of the profits from Sean the Leprechaun. And if they didn't get it, if they didn't get their share of the profits, they were going to kill Lee and his family.
Right.
So Dina told Lee that to protect him, he was going to have to go on the run. So Lee changed his identity. He had read the book The Day of the Jackal. I've never read it, so I don't really... I've heard of it, but...
Yeah, I've not.
and apparently in The Day of the Jackal, it details how to disappear and like
Okay.
change your identity and everything like that. So that's how he learned how to change his identity.
Wow.
So he went to Newquay to keep his wife and son safe because he was like, well, they're after me. So if I go on the run, they're going to leave my wife and my son alone. So he went to Newquay and changed his name to Colin Mitchell and he's working in an arcade.
Right. Okay.
Whilst
She's
she's
got-
married somebody else
Uh-huh.
and he's paying his wages into her bank account. So he's obviously like using his money to pay his rent and you know obviously keep money for himself for what he needed. But the majority of his money was going to her bank account, you know, to pay for their mortgage, their child, you know.
So she's the one that's laughing here at the minute.
Yeah. So basically, he was funding her wedding day. He paid, because that money that he's given her, that she used that to pay for her wedding day.
Awful.
So
she should just split them.
So on the 2nd of December, 2nd of November, 1991, that's Dina and Julian got married.
Right.
But of course, like, Julian didn't know anything. Like, obviously, he's innocent in all this as well.
Right, okay.
Like, he didn't know anything about her being married.
Right, okay.
She had told him that she was divorced, so...
Right, okay.
You know, you can't blame him for anything.
No, of course.
And then they went to Florida for their honeymoon, and then after that, they came back to Dina's house in Yapton and settled into married life.
Wow.
And I have to say, throughout this whole story, I have no idea about Darren, their son. Like, from what I researched, it didn't mention him. So I'm not sure if he's actually living with her or if...
Well, yeah, because surely he would be like, well, why...
What's going on? Like, where's my dad? Who's this new guy?
That you're marrying, yeah.
Yeah, so I'm not... He's not
yeah.
mentioned, so I don't know what the situation with him is.
He must be aware of... Well, you'd think, aware of something, because his dad's not there and she's moved in.
But then, like later on in the story, I'll tell you, like, they go away and things like that. So it's like, well, we're for longer than just a holiday. So where's he stay? Like, where's the son while she's away? So I just want to, just in case you were wondering that I'm not mentioning him, I actually don't know.
Right. Okay. Fair enough.
So not long after they were married, Dina told Julian that she was terminally ill, and the Woolwich Building Society were going to sack her because she was taking too much time off.
Right.
So she'd obviously been acting sick. Like that just didn't just come out of the blue.
Right. Okay.
And you know, she had been taking time off work and stuff to obviously
make it look like...
to make it look believable. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you know, spoiler alert. She's not. No, it's not wrong there.
No.
So because obviously he's like, what the hell? That's outrageous. Like, you're ill. Like, how can your work sack you? Like, that's ridiculous. But to him, she was obviously really ill and she needed treatment. So, like, how dare they threaten to sack her? Like, he was absolutely livid.
Yeah.
However, like, as I said, like, not only was the illness a lie, the reason she was getting the sack was because of the money that she'd been stealing.
She'd been found out.
Yeah. So she was being investigated for stealing more than £26,000.
Right, okay.
So she blamed it on her first husband, Lee.
Oh,
that poor guy. He's just...
What a shame.
I know, he's just got a bum deal here, like.
Oh, totally.
So she said that he had came back to Yapton and he was threatening her and he forced her to steal the money. So that's what she was telling him.
Right. Mm.
So Dina was also cheating on Julian.
Oh, she sounds like a right delight. Jeez.
And one of her neighbours actually said that she must... No disrespect to her neighbours, but they must take an interest.
I was going to say, they must be very nosy neighbours.
I was being polite there, I said they must have, they must take an interest. But like, this guy, because it was like one particular couple that was, on this documentary that I watched on YouTube. But anyway, this guy would say, like, there was a few close calls. Like, Julian would come home for lunch every day. Mm-hmm. And sometimes he would be just, like, driving into the street and, like, one of her men would be, driving out the street. They would literally, like, pass each other.
Yeah.
So, she was playing with fire, like.
Oh, she definitely was.
So Dina then told Julian that Lee, her first husband, her husband.
Oh, yeah, I was going to say her still her husband.
She told her other husband that he was sending her hate mail, and she had even recorded a threatening phone call from him. So you're going to wonder, why is there a threatening phone call?
Or how is there a threatening phone call? Yeah. Uh-huh.
Well, before Lee had left, when she was making up all this stuff, she told him to write some letters and make that phone call. So I'll tell you what it is in a minute. But so that to the mafia, it would look like they had split up. So then they would leave Dina and their son alone, because she'd be like, look, he sent me this threatening messages.
Okay, yeah.
We're not together anymore.
No. So like, I'm just wondering, obviously I don't know if you know the answer, but like, what's Lee thinking? Is the deal with, isn't it still going ahead? Are they getting the money?
Well, he's believing all this.
Yeah. No, I mean, because to me, I'd be thinking, well, he's got a job down there and he's providing her money, and he'd be thinking, well, when's this deal going to happen? You know,
I
why am I running on the run if it's not, you know, this deal's not happening? 'Cause
well, he's maybe thinking that she's sorting it out. She's the one who's dealing with it, and these things take time.
Maybe. Because then I'd be like, well, I want to see some of the money, you know?
Well, yeah. So she'd obviously planned this all way before he had left. She had it all planned out.
Right.
And there's more to the letters, but I'll get to that later.
Mm-hmm.
So one day, Dina's neighbour was sitting, the same guy.
Jesus.
No, he was minding his own business this time.
Are you sure?
He was sitting in his living room with a friend of his when there was a knock at the door.
Right.
So he found Dina standing there, clutching her blouse, and was obviously upset, and she said that she'd been attacked. So the neighbour decided to phone his wife at work to ask her advice on what to do. I think, I know, I can see the look on your face. I think he just panicked and was like, what?
I don't know what to do with a woman that's on my doorstep.
I mean, like, our immediate thought is, well, bring her out the house, phone the police, but I think he just must have panicked and he was like...
my wife's got the answer.
Yeah.
She'll know what to do.
So his wife was like, well, the first thing you need to do is get a doctor, make sure she's alright.
Mm-hmm.
So she was like, right, I'll come home. So the wife went home and, they'd phoned a doctor and whatnot. But they found out that, like, Dina had said that she'd been raped, so they called the police.
Mm-hmm.
Dina had lied.
I was going to say, she's not had, I mean, she hasn't, has she?
And said that Lee had raped her. But of course, the police took her allegations seriously, obviously.
Course,
we know that.
Yeah, of course. I mean, at
she's
the
a lying
time,
bitch, but,
Yeah, at the time, of course, the police would be doing
their
their
job. So
job.
they took her allegations seriously. She told the police that Lee had been stalking her. He had broken into her house, which is actually his own house, but never mind.
Yeah.
And attacked her. She did have injuries. She had like a couple of burns that she said came from him burning her with a cigarette, and she also had vaginal bruising.
Okay.
She must have done that to herself.
I was just going to say, yeah, she must have done that to herself.
I don't know how. I don't want to know how.
No, me neither. Thank you very much.
So Lee found out that the police were looking for him, and of course he still thought that the mafia was after him as well. So he's shit himself, was like panicking. Mm-hmm. But he turned up at the house one night to kind of say to Dina, like, what the hell's going on? Julian was asleep upstairs.
I was just going to say, I mean, where was he?
So Lee confronted Dina about the story she'd been making up about him, but she, like, kind of hustled him out the door, because she's obviously panicking in case her husband gets out of bed and,
sees another husband.
Yeah, so I don't know how she managed it, but, like, she managed to get him to leave. Mm-hmm. So, anyway, the police did arrest Lee later, but I think it was after the end of this case, like after she gets her
comeuppance.
Yeah. And he had a cast iron alibi. He had been working at the arcade 300 miles away when Dina claimed that he had attacked her.
Right.
So as I said before, her injuries were self-inflicted.
So I'm assuming the police must have known that he had a different name by this point as well, because if they did investigations to find out where he was, the employer would be like, well, no, I employ a...
Yeah, they found out later, like, as I say, like, sort of at the end of everything, like, obviously everyone all came out, so... On the 30th of June 1994, it was Julian's 31st birthday. His mum, Rosemary, got home from work and thought, well, phone my son to say happy birthday. Mm-hmm. But Dina answered the phone and told Rosemary that Julian was ill and that he had been ill since Tuesday. It was now Thursday, so he'd been ill for a couple of days. Mm-hmm. And Rosemary's like, oh, what's wrong with him? And Dina said, oh, he's had too much sun. And Rosemary was like, that's weird because Julian, he didn't like being out in the sun he didn't like sunbathing, he didn't like being out in the sun for too long.
Yeah.
And Dina had said he was being sick, which was probably a mixture of the sun and the alcohol he'd been drinking. But again, Rosemary said he didn't drink very much though. He didn't like the sun, he didn't drink very much.
It doesn't sound like something he would do.
No, that doesn't sound like him at all.
Yeah.
So she didn't even get to wish him a happy birthday. So sometime that night, the next door neighbour's doorbell rang.
Oh, for God's sake, this bloody neighbour!
They were asleep, so I'm sure they must have got a fright with somebody at the door, in the middle of the night. Anyway, it was Dina, and she said, it's Julian, I can't wake him, he's stopped breathing. And she said she'd called an ambulance and she'd tried to revive him, but he wouldn't wake up. So the paramedics arrived and rushed upstairs. The neighbour asked Dina what had happened, because she was like, oh, I just saw Julian a couple of days ago. He said he'd had the flu, but, he seemed okay. And Dina just said, oh, he's taken some pills. So the paramedics took Julian out to the ambulance, and they said to Dina, maybe it would be better if she sat in the front of the ambulance rather than the back with Julian. And her neighbour said that she seemed like an excited child who's been given a bag of sweets because she was getting to sit in the front of the ambulance.
Okay.
Weird.
Yes, very.
But unfortunately, Julian died from an overdose of antidepressants and aspirin.
Oh.
So the following morning, Julian's work colleague, Jeannie Knight, she got to work at 7:30 in the morning. And as she was walking down the street, she noticed like two people were sitting on the doorstep of the office. And at first she thought they were like just maybe homeless or something like that. Like just having a seat. But as she got closer, she realised it was a man and a woman, and the woman who was wearing a nightie under her coat was Dina.
Right.
So Dina was crying, and
oh, her husband's just died.
yeah, as soon as she saw Ginny, she was like, Julian's dead. And so obviously. But in the next breath, quite clearly, without any sobbing, she said, I want to see the advertising manager about Julian's life insurance. So the sobbing and the, hysterics kind of just stopped. It was like, right, I want to see the manager.
Right. Brilliant.
So Julian had died of a massive overdose, and Dina had said it was suicide. But as Julian had been in good health and high spirits before he died, the police began to investigate. So it was reported that the coroner found no evidence that Julian had accidentally taken a lethal overdose, but there was insufficient evidence to say whether it was suicide or not.
Right.
So at the inquest, Sussex police stated that there was no proof that his death was suspicious. The coroner recorded an open verdict, and the police closed their investigation. So Julian's mum, Rosemary, who had obviously been asking Dina questions like, whose antidepressants were they? Like, where did he get them from? And Dina said they were hers and they were in the kitchen drawer. But Dina obviously didn't like the questions, and she told Rosemary that if she didn't get on with the funeral plans, then she was going to get Julian cremated because his mum wanted to bury him.
Right.
And she was like, if you didn't get a move on, I'm just going to get him cremated. And she was just like being really unpleasant and nasty. Like, if your husband's just died,
yeah,
and you're not going to be unpleasant to his mother, are you?
Well, no,
She's just lost her son. So,
exactly.
It's just not the way you'd expect a grieving wife to treat her grieving mother-in-law.
Well, I mean, you could maybe understand it being a bit like, what's the word? Like, she's not got the patience, or she might snap at things maybe a little bit, but not just being pure.
No, she was just being unpleasant.
Yeah.
And there was obviously a reason why she wanted to get him cremated. She wanted the funeral as soon as possible.
Yeah.
So Dina left the house for the funeral in a black leather miniskirt. Now, I'm going to tell you, this is the neighbour that described her.
Oh, for God's sake. Was this documented just a bit by the neighbour?
Dina left the house for the funeral in a black leather miniskirt, a black blouse which barely covered her boobs, and she was waving to the neighbours as she left. Like, they just said it seemed really inappropriate. So Julian wasn't cremated. His mum did have him buried. And the funeral was like held in a wee old church, and it was packed with mourners. But while the right hand side of the church was full of Julian's family, friends and work colleagues, the left hand side only had one person sitting there, and that was Dina.
Oh.
Which is weird, isn't it? I mean, like, you'd think that even if people didn't know her husband, they knew her, so they would be there
For her.
Yeah, exactly.
So did anyone know she was married to this?
Well, I don't know. I don't know the situation there, so maybe none of them knew. Maybe they all just assumed that she was still with Lee and he was just away.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, maybe. And one of Julian's friends said that he will never forget the sight of her face. It was just expressionless.
Yeah.
Also, one of his colleagues said that there were beautiful flowers that had been sent like by family and everything, but he noticed that the flowers that from Dina had been stolen from other graves around the cemetery and stuffed into like a paper bag. Those paper bags that you just brought down, because Laura brought us a cake.
Yes, I did.
So we had a cake before we were in between recording. But it was like a sort of like just that little paper bag that you can, that if you'd maybe get if you're buying a cake.
I know what you mean, yeah.
Yeah, that's what the flowers were shoved in from his wife.
Lovely.
And there was a card from her, and it said, "To Julian, because you loved me so."
Okay.
Not that she loved him,
Uh-huh.
but that he loved her.
Right.
Yeah.
Very strange.
Yes, very. So, now that Julian had gone, Lee was still on the run, so Dina was alone.
Oh my God.
What was she gonna do?
Don't tell me she moved on to somebody else.
Well, a lot of men came and went.
Because I was almost thinking that maybe it was a roundabout way of her paving the way for Lee to come back. And obviously that's not the case.
No, that's not the case.
Right, okay.
A lot of men came and went after Julian's death. Some lasted a day or two, some lasted a bit longer. A man called Robert Waite used to work with Dina at the Halifax Building Society in 1980. And one day he received a card from Dina inviting him to a reunion party. So he phoned her and she invited him round for dinner. So he accepted and he went round, but she didn't really seem very happy to see him.
Right.
It sounds like a bit of a bizarre situation. But anyway, so there's a lady called Mandy Fuchs. She had also worked with Robert and Dina, and Mandy and Dina used to actually compete for Robert's affection. You know, they obviously both fancied him, and like Dina always had it in her head that something had gone on between Robert and Mandy, which there hadn't. They were just friends, but Dina always had it in her head that there was something between them.
Right.
So anyway, after Robert had been round for dinner at Dina's, Dina phoned Mandy, she'd seen her for however long, and told her that Robert had just been round for a meal, and then one thing led to another, and all of a sudden they were in bed together. And Mandy was like, Dina, I don't care. I don't care. I don't want to know this.
Yeah,
Like,
I'm not interested.
that's weird.
I haven't spoke to you for all this time, and that's why you wanted me.
Yeah, exactly. But Dina just obviously wanted her to know, just to kind of gloat and thinking that she'd be jealous. Whereas this other woman was probably like, I don't give a fuck.
Yeah, like, I don't care.
I don't care about somebody who I was friends with 20 years ago or whatever.
Well, exactly. Like, I've probably moved on with my life a lot by now.
So, yeah, so after all these years, she just wanted to let Mandy know that she had won. She had got Robert in bed.
Right, okay.
So, Dina had told Robert about Julian dying. And when he asked what had happened, she must have mentioned that she was still married to Lee. Just,
yeah.
You know. But when he asked what had happened, she told him that that Julian was into weight training and he took an overdose of steroids.
Oh,
so that's a different story to what she'd been saying before.
Because it was antidepressants before, wasn't it?
Yeah, antidepressants and aspirin. And she told him that her first husband had been abusive and the second husband had died.
Right.
So, Robert, you know, obviously, he felt sorry for her. You know, you've had an abusive husband, you've had a husband who's died, but he wasn't interested in her romantically. Like, yeah, they'd have sex that first night, but like he didn't want a relationship with her. He wasn't interested. And she did actually phone Mandy to tell her that as well, though. And she wasn't happy about it at all.
Oh,
like
right.
she was like, no, he doesn't want to see me romantically now. Don't know why she thought this Mandy would be interested.
I know. Obviously, she just thought that they had him in common.
But because Robert felt sorry for her, they did like
spend time together. Or?
Yeah. So one day she just dropped into the conversation with Robert that she had to go and have radiotherapy.
Right.
So I asked what was wrong, and she said, "Oh, you know, it's just a little problem I've got. Nothing for you to worry about." And like she was just so devious that she knew, like by doing that, like, oh no, it's fine, you don't have to worry about it. She knew that because he was such a nice guy,
it would keep him there.
Yeah, exactly. Like by telling him that she was dying, he wouldn't walk away from her. Which is exactly what happened. He didn't walk away from her. So he was kind of stuck in a non-romantic relationship with her that he felt that he couldn't get out of. So Robert decided to take Dina to her favourite place, Florida, where he would take care of her during her final months. This is what I meant about the son. I don't know where the son was when this, because what he thinks is happening is Dina's dying, so he's going to take her to Florida, look after her while she dies in Florida. So that's why I was like, I don't understand where her son was at this point, so I don't know. I can't answer that. So they drove to the airport in Robert's car and parked in the short stay car park, as Dina had said her dad was going to come and pick it up, later on or whatever, and off they went off to Florida.
Right.
So after a few days of being in Florida, Robert woke up and he felt this like sharp jab in his side. Him and Dina were sharing a bed, and he said to her, I think I just felt something in my side. And Dina was like, oh, sorry, I think I just scratched you, or like maybe something bit you. So I'm not...
Bit weird.
Yeah, I don't actually... Oh, well, I do actually know. I just realised I do know. Because I was just thinking, I can't remember what happened there, but I've just remembered.
Right, okay.
And he noticed that she was awake already, like, because at first he thought he'd sort of woken her up, but like when he realised, like, she was totally wide awake. But then he said he's sure that he missed that next day. He thinks she drugged him, and that would be what the jab was, the needle.
Oh, needle, right? Yeah.
So he was out. He was unconscious. And when I interviewed, Robert said that he didn't want to think about what might have happened on that day when he was unconscious, so that the interviewer just didn't push him to talk about it. So I don't know if he thinks that... Well, I don't know. He didn't want to talk about it, so I'm not going to talk about it. He was unconscious.
And he didn't know what happened.
And he didn't know what happened for a day. He was out of it. So, shortly after that, Dina told Robert that she had to go to New York.
Okay.
Now, this is a dying woman. They came out so that she could spend her final months of it. Anyway, she told Robert that she had to go to New York to appear as a witness in an anti-mafia trial. And she would be back soon. She said, I don't know how long she said she was going to be away for, but she was going to be for this trial and she'd come back.
Okay.
But she actually flew back to the UK as she had to appear in court for defrauding the Woolwich Building Society.
Oh, yeah.
So she just up and left Robert and left him stranded in Florida. He had nothing. For 3 weeks, he was there with no money, no food, until one day he was arrested, handcuffed and fingerprinted and deported. So I'm assuming that the hotel must have phoned the police for him not checking out when he was supposed to.
Oh, do you think he was supposed to have checked out?
Yeah, I'm assuming so. Because, well, I don't know, because... Well, I don't know how long... I don't know if... See, it's a bit...
Sketchy.
Yeah, a bit sketchy, because obviously, like, they were supposed to spend in her final months there, but then...
So you think they would have somewhere more long-term?
Yeah, exactly. So I don't know. But that's what happened anyway. That's how he got home, was because he got deported.
Right, okay.
Because he didn't have any money to get home. He was
Right,
stranded in Florida. So when he got back to England, he went down to Dina's house, obviously, to get some answers, but she wasn't there. Her next door neighbour told Robert that Dina had been... This next door neighbour knows everything.
Fucking nosy neighbour.
I have to say, none of my neighbours are like... My neighbours probably don't even know my name.
No, I was just going to say, I mean, they wouldn't be that nosy that they know what's going on.
Yeah, so the next door neighbour told Robert that Dina wasn't there because she had been sentenced that day to 18 months in prison. So that it was the 31st of August 1995. And she was convicted for stealing £26,000 from the Woolwich Building Society in 1991. She had created a fake account for an imaginary customer called Christina Duke, and Dina was putting money into this Christina's account. But she said that this Christina stole the money with her husband. Dina, she's like, Christina and my husband, Lee Wyatt. It was because remember, like when Dina told Julian that Lee had been sending her mail and making threatening phone calls, but she had basically told him what to say. Like she had dictated. Well, this is where the letters came into play.
Right.
Lee had written that he had stolen the money with Christina Duke, so he was incriminating himself.
Oh, so pretend like if the mafia came calling, then they'd be like, yeah, she's not got any money, he's stolen it all. But actually, that was almost to get her off the hook for the Woolwich Bank stealing. Jesus Christ.
It's a bit confusing, isn't it?
It is a bit confusing.
So, like, one policeman said, quote, he was literally incriminating himself in the letters, saying he was on the run with Christine, a woman who never existed, and the police would never catch him as he's too clever for them. And there's a number of such letters. Maybe there was a few letters, because I'm quoting this guy. I must have quoted them all. I'm good at quoting here. Good. But you've got to ask the question, how on earth can a woman influence her husband to write such letters and change his lifestyle completely as he did? End quote.
Yeah, I mean, that is a fair question, because you do think, like, how has that got to that? Like, how is that?
I mean, from what... I gathered, I mean, he just thought he was protecting his wife and his son. He was protecting his family from everything that he did. It was to protect his family. That I don't know. Anyway, Dina was released after 9 months, and she returned to her house in Yapton. And even the neighbour was like, she's got a bit of affront, you know, coming back to like when we all know what she's done.
We know what she's done. We know what she's done.
One day she was in a shop and she met a man called Phil Trott. So it was an embroidery shop, and he was looking for them to do a design on his business shirts. So Dina heard him talking to the shop assistant, and she was like, I can do that for you. So they chatted, because remember, she used to make the teddies and stuff.
Of course, yeah. She was actually maybe telling the truth that she could do that.
Yeah. So they chatted and arranged to meet in the pub later that night, and they started seeing each other.
Oh, for God's sake. Can it not just be like business?
Phil was a landscape gardener, and Dina told him that her friend in Florida would give him a big contract to landscape her garden. So they took research trips around like gardens of English stately homes, and they would have sex in the outdoors. Excuse me. Like she loved to pose in front of the camera, she'd flash her bits, and you know. For weeks their relationship was fun and carefree because, you know, they were having sex outside, she was flashing her bits, and you know, they were obviously living their best life.
Yeah, fair enough.
Again, don't know where her son is. But then one day they were in the bedroom and Dina started coughing into her hand. She looked down and went, oh no, not again. And she had blood in her hand. So he asked what was wrong, and she acted, you know, she was like, no, it's fine. I don't want to worry you, you know. And basically same act, different guy, isn't it? Really. She eventually told him that she had cancer of the throat. Of course, there was no cancer. There was no friend in Florida. I don't know how she actually managed that though. To cough, unless she'd already had it in her hand.
Like a tissue. Or maybe it was nail varnish or something.
I was going to say maybe it was tomato ketchup, like.
Maybe.
I don't, you know, or maybe she'd kind of cut her hand earlier and just, I don't know. She's obviously figured out some way to trick him. So after a couple of months of them seeing each other, Phil noticed that his credit cards were missing. And after looking for them for a while, he actually found them in Dina's handbag. And cash was missing from his wallet as well. So what he told one of his friends, and that friend came round, and they're like, nah. No, she's stealing, you know, she's a thief, we're not having this. So they changed the locks on Phil's front door because she had a key for his house, so changed the locks. So not long after, the phone rang and it was Dina. She told Phil that she had been to the travel agents and had a bit of a problem, and that she would be in his house, she would be at his house soon. So he said that he didn't want to upset her, so he changed the locks back.
Okay.
And then his pal was still there, so Phil and his friends sat chatting for a while, and then they both thought, nah, something's not right with this woman, so they changed the locks back again. So then when she did turn up, she's going to get in.
Right. Okay.
So she was obviously not happy and asked why he changed the locks, and he'd said to her that he knew that she was a fake, like, and he'd said to her, like, there was lots of things that she'd said and done and that just didn't add up, and he was just like, nah, we're done. Yeah,
this is not going any further.
But she didn't dwell on it for long.
Of course not, she'd probably prey on it another victim.
Because she was soon putting adverts in the Lonely Hearts column in the newspaper, and she had plenty of men replying to her. So Richard Thompson was a divorced telecoms manager, and he answered one of her ads. Within months, they were arranging to fly to Florida and get married at the Holiday Inn. Remember, she's still married to Lee.
Oh, yeah, of course, yeah. And where is he?
I think at some point he was living on the streets, I think.
Oh.
Yeah. Or at this point he could still be working in the arcade. So Dina said she said that she would arrange for people to be their witnesses. I think she was going to get, I don't know if it was friends or family, but she was arranging the witnesses. Yeah. So they had everything arranged, and all they needed was their witnesses so they could get married. But when they got out to Florida, their witnesses never turned up. So at the last minute, Richard had to go around the hotel and find people to be their witnesses, and they ended up with the hotel manager and a member of staff doing it for them.
You're not a witness for somebody.
Yeah.
I vaguely remember that.
My friend worked in a hotel, and there was a couple from England wanted to get married, just the two of them, but they obviously needed a witness, so my friend was like, can you come in and And we'll both be witnesses. So I went some random wedding photos because they took photos with us. I'm like, why do they want us in their photos? But they actually had us in their wedding photos and everything. So I'll be some random person. This couple, if they're still married, I've got me and my pal in their wedding photos. And I wasn't even dressed up for it. I mean, you know how you dress up for a wedding, a nice dress.
Yeah.
I had basically what I would wear for work, like, and so did my pal. We basically just had like a black skirt and a white blouse on.
Yeah.
Like what you would wear to the office. That's what we were dressed
That's
in.
what you had on.
And I was hungover because it was a Saturday morning. I was always hungover on a Saturday morning. I never got out of bed on a Saturday morning usually.
Jesus.
So yeah. But yeah, I've done that.
So yeah, I was gonna say it happens.
But I think it was just like she had said that she was arranging for her friends or whatever, and I think it just goes to show that she hadn't told anybody about it. The same with what we thought with Julian, you know, when she was at his funeral with nobody there.
Yeah.
I think it was probably the same with Richard as well. I think she was like, yeah, I'll get my friends to come over and be witnesses, but then they didn't turn up. I mean,
Because she's not obviously told them.
She
still may be married to Lee. Well, she still is married to Lee.
Hope you're not too confused. I hope none of the listeners are too confused.
I mean, it's a lot. This woman's a lot.
She has a lot. Are you ready?
Christ, how much more is there?
Not much. So Dina promised Richard a new life in Florida.
She's got an obsession with Florida, doesn't she?
So have you.
Well, I know I love Florida.
You love Florida.
I don't go over there and leave random men and get married and stuff like that.
I doubt Justin would be too happy if you just left. Well, maybe he would be if you just left him there.
Maybe.
Glad to get rid of you. So yeah, she'd promised him a new life in Florida. She told him that she had won £300,000 on the lottery.
Which she hasn't.
No. I'm quite surprised she only said £300,000. I thought it would be maybe 1 million, but maybe she thought that wasn't believable.
Right, because the mafia and Disney and all that.
Who knows? So yeah, she'd won £300,000 on the lottery, and she encouraged him to finally realise his childhood dreams. He had always wanted a boat. That was his childhood dream. Always wanted a boat.
All right.
So Dina said, well, we've got money. Let's set you up in business as a big game fishing skipper. So Richard went to American Sea School. That's a thing.
Okay.
Yeah, that is a thing. I actually did go.
All right, okay.
Which is actually run by the US Coast Guard.
Oh, right, okay.
And he worked really hard to pass the exam, and he passed it with flying colours.
Uh-huh.
So Richard then took early retirement, and Dina spent his payoff renovating his cottage to rent it out while they were living in Florida.
Mm-hmm.
So, and just a wee side note, they had a waste disposal in the sink for all their waste food, and Dina asked Richard one day if it would get rid of bones, to which he replied, no. I just thought I'd put that as a side note, because that's I'd be like, red flag, why are you asking me if bones can go in there?
Yeah, a bit of a random question.
Mm-hmm. So that was just a wee side note. Anyway, so Richard had always wanted a German Shepherd, and Dina bought him one. His name was Odin. I don't know why she was buying him a dog when they were going to move to Florida, though. I mean, you can take the dog with you, but like, why did she not just wait till she got to Florida?
Well, yeah, you think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One day she randomly said to Richard, do you mind if I pretend to attack you and see what Odin does? So she pretended to attack him by just punching him or whatever, and Odin went for her and bit her. There's a reason for it. I'll tell you in a minute. So one day, Dina told Richard that a solicitor would be arriving the next day with a green card, which is a permit allowing a foreigner to live and work permanently in the US, and then the following day they could fly to Florida. So it was all planned out. This was it. We're doing it. We're going.
We're off.
A couple of days we're going. So that night she ran him a bath. Then once he was finishing his bath, he came through and she said that she had a surprise for him, and he was to lie on the floor. She then tied his hands behind his back, and she put some tape around his ankles. He went along with it because he was thinking it was like a sex thing. Mm-hmm. You know, he always said like that, you know, tying up and stuff. So he... Yeah.
Thought yes.
Yes, I'm getting it.
I know, I'm getting something out.
Aye. And then she placed a towel across his face, and the next thing you knew, he had this absolute colossal pain in his head. So she was hitting him over the head with an aluminium baseball bat.
Holy shit.
And the blood was pouring out of his head, like, into his eyes, and, like, she stabbed him with a carving knife in his shoulder.
Oh.
She then slipped in the blood and fell to the floor. So Richard, like, sort of felt for her, because obviously he's got blood coming out of him, he's got a towel on him, but he felt for her, grabbed her face, and pushed his thumb into her eye.
Ooh.
So she went for the knife again, and he said to her, I'm going to give you a choice here. If you don't let go of that knife, I'm going to push your eye right through your head.
Oh.
So good on him for, you know, quick thinking. So
Uh-huh.
she dropped the knife because she obviously didn't want her eye being poked out.
Yeah.
And he managed to get up and he called the police.
Right. Okay.
So the reason Dina had pretended to attack him before must have been because she was planning to murder Richard and she wanted to see what the dog would do.
Yeah.
So before she properly attacked him, so like she locked Odin away this time.
I was just going to say.
I don't know why she bothered asking him. I mean, like, to me that would be a.
I was done that anyway.
Yeah, exactly. If I was going to attack somebody, the first thing I would do is lock the dog away because,
yeah, exactly.
of course, the dogs, well, most dogs, I would think, are going to, their instinct's going to kick in. They're going to protect their owner, aren't they?
I would think so.
So, I don't know why she bothered asking it. Like,
Yeah.
but I wish she hadn't because obviously Odin protected him the first time. He would have done it again.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so Dina was arrested and tried for the attempted murder of Richard. She pleaded not guilty. She claimed that Richard became violent when she told him that Florida was all a lie. She said that she had hit him with a baseball bat in self-defence. So the jury believed her. And look at your eyebrows just went ring. Her eyebrows just went straight up.
As if to say, really? They actually did believe her.
Yeah. So yeah, the jury believed her, and on the 17th of August 2000, Dina was acquitted of attempted murder, but she admitted 15 counts of deception against Richard and her former partners and was jailed again. So she was sentenced to 3 years and 9 months. So the day after Dina tried to murder Richard, an estate agent turned up at the house and told Richard that he had been told by Dina to sell the house. And she told him that Richard was in Florida. So basically she was expecting Richard to be dead now.
Mm-hmm.
So she had said to the estate agent, oh yeah, he's moved to Florida so you can just sell the house. So she was just selling the house. Like, kill him and selling his house, basically. So it turned out, you know, Dina planned to kill Richard, sell the house, and no one would be suspicious because they all thought he was abroad.
Ugh.
So that's how she thought she was going to get away with it. Everybody would think that he was
He's abroad
in Florida.
Uh-huh.
So during the investigation into the alleged murder attempt on Richard, the police took a closer look at Dina's life and they became suspicious of Dina's account of Julian's death.
Mm-hmm.
And after the verdict of her trial, they announced a reinvestigation into Julian's death,
Right.
which had been 8 years before.
Mm-hmm.
So police exhumed Julian's body, so good on Julian's mum for getting him buried.
Mm-hmm.
But forensic tests failed to reveal any new evidence. So the case was just circumstantial. But police they focused on the conflicting accounts Dina had given on the night that Julian died. So Dina was charged with murder. And in a written statement, she told police that she could not accurately recall what had happened on the night that Julian died. At her trial, the prosecution argued that Dina had murdered Julian for money, and a friend of hers had came forward and said that Dina had laced his favourite meal, a hot curry, with a lethal dose of prescription drugs. So we reckon that's how he died.
Sounds like it might have been.
Yeah, so in December 2003, Dina was convicted of Julian's murder and was sentenced to life in prison.
Good.
So she completed her minimum term of imprisonment in 2019 and is now eligible for parole.
Oh.
So in April 2022, which was like...
Last month?
it's
2 months
June
ago.
now.
It's June now, yeah.
2 months ago.
2 months ago.
The parole board announced that they would consider her case for release and publish their decision in May. Now, I have to say to our listeners, yes, it's June that this has been published, but it's the 1st of June today that we're recording.
Mm-hmm.
And this will be released next week, so it's only still going to be the start of June. But if I do find an update, I will update everybody at a later date. But for now, I don't know because it was only May was just yesterday.
Yeah.
So
and there's nothing been.
And I haven't seen anything. No. Yeah. So if I do, I will let everybody know. So Lee Wyatt later said that what he did was for love and in the hope that he would be reunited with his son. And as I said, throughout this whole research, I've never seen anything mentioned about the son.
So you've no idea what part.
Someone there, maybe he was living with... I don't even know about her family or anything like that. You know, like if she had parents that...
Because where was he when she was swanning off to Florida
Exactly.
and stuff? And when she was in prison for the stealing the money and stuff. So he must have been somewhere.
I'm thinking maybe he was with his grandparents or something
maybe.
like that. Hopefully, it was
Well,
somewhere.
it just sounds like she was living a very free life of not having a child.
Of not having a child,
Do you know what I mean?
yeah.
Like, there didn't seem much responsibility of her son there, so maybe he was living with other relatives, and maybe that's why he's not been mentioned, because...
Well, hopefully, wherever he was happy and still had a happy life, no matter what she was doing.
Yeah.
So Lee was actually on the run for 3 years.
Wow.
And was sending her money, having no clue what she was doing. All this marriages and deaths and Floridas and dying and all that. He had no idea. And at some point, he even ended up sleeping rough. After Dina's conviction, police were still investigating her about the disappearance of another of her boyfriends.
Right.
A guy called Stoyan Kostov, who she dated in the 70s and 80s, has been missing since they dated. So since the early 80s, I think. She met him in Bulgaria because he was Bulgarian. She was a regular visitor to Bulgaria in the late 70s and early 80s. And as I said, they dated for a while, and he's never been found. He's never been seen since they dated.
Bloody hell.
So
She could have had something to do with that.
exactly. I mean, it could be a coincidence, but we don't know what's happened to him.
Bloody hell.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I kind of feel sorry for Lee and all this, really. I mean, obviously, I feel sorry for the other people as well, but...
I know. But, like,
know.
he having to go on the run for no reason except that your wife wanted you out the way so that she could go and get money from... Because this has all been about money.
Yeah.
Every single bit of this has been about money.
Absolutely, yeah. It's crazy.
So she wanted her husband out of the way.
But then you do wonder, like, why did she not try and maybe murder him? Like,
Because he didn't have any money.
well, no, I guess that's also the reason. But I mean, obviously they don't have life insurance.
Because remember, their business went down the pan,
Yeah,
and then he was working in a hotel. No disrespect to anybody working in a hotel, but it's not going to be like loads of money, is it? It's not going to be like mega bucks working in a hotel. So he didn't have any money, and maybe they didn't have life insurance or anything like that. So
True.
She was just like, get rid of that one, and I'll find somebody else to.
Yeah.
Or maybe at some point she was planning on getting back together with him.
Maybe.
Once she had got all this money. I mean, I don't know.
Well, yeah, because then she was obviously going to be saying, well, that's it, we've been paid out on Sean the Leprechaun.
Exactly. I never thought of that. That could have been her end goal. Like, once she'd managed to fleece all these men out of money, then she could go back to Lee and say, that's it, I've done it, we've got the deal.
Yeah, maybe.
But then Sean the Leprechaun wouldn't have been appearing on TV or anything like that, so we would realise at some point.
Maybe. Who knows?
Anyway, so thank you everybody for listening. That was a bit of a bizarre one.
It was a bizarre one.
So I hope you all managed to keep up.
Yes.
Because there was a few times where Laura looked a bit confused, and as I said, the eyebrows were getting raised. But excuse me, if you want to follow us or get in contact with us, you can find our details in the show notes. If you want to head on over to Patreon and get some bonus content with prices starting from as little as £1 a month, it's patreon.com/CrimeDivers. The link will be in the show notes.
And if you haven't already, as always, please don't forget to subscribe, rate and review.
Thanks for listening.
Bye.